Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives. Not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Cars!
What did you say?
Cars!
Oh, jeez.
Hey,
I
Rich.
didn't even get a chance to be welcome to the show, and now we got these magical words coming out of heaven.
Rich, seriously. Minus 11. Vehicles won't start. The cars won't start. The tractors require a double dose of starting fluid to start. 20 minutes in the snow and we are frozen. Literally, it's all we can do to keep the animals alive. That's where we are right now.
Well, it's
minus
10
11.
degrees here, and compared to minus 11, that's a huge difference. I almost feel like taking the Tampa bar over to the river and taking a dip.
Well,
yeah, for you being that much further south than we are, that's pretty amazing, the difference.
Well,
but,
all right. Since this is USA Prepares and we're a preparedness broadcast, let me just share this with you. As you all know, Rich Scheben heats his house with wood. He has a cast iron style wood stove in the kitchen area, and through convection and radiant heating, that inside cooking wood stove heats his whole cabin. And it's a great plan. What we do is we have an outside wood furnace. It heats about 400 gallons of water in a water jacket around the firebox. And that hot water is about roughly between 165 and 180 degrees, depending on where we set it and depending on whether it's summer or winter. That hot water is circulated underground into the heating system of our house, so we have heat exchangers, 2 heat exchangers that we blow air over in a normal furnace. So it doesn't look like anything different out of the ordinary. It looks like just regular heating system with ductwork, and it heats. The heat exchangers are heated by the water that's hot, that's heated by the outdoor wood furnace. Well, these past 10 days or so of abnormal temperatures, our outdoor wood furnace is being taxed. Right now in the studio, where I am right now, I've got 3 layers of shirts on, thermal and, undershirt, a t-shirt, thermal and a shirt, and blue jeans, and heavy socks. It's 52 degrees. Now, it may not seem like much, but let me just share with you 52 degrees. 20 degrees lower, just 20. I would have a frozen cup of coffee on the studio desk because water freezes at 32. We're doing really, really, really well compared to Texas, where they shut off the electricity. I know you've got a whole bunch of stories, but I just want to put this in perspective, class. Please pay close attention to this week's classes, because we're going to teach you how to do things, what you need to know, and prevent the misery that so many people are going through right now, because the electric company said, shoot, gosh, man, wow, we've really stretched the grid. We can't do it. So we're going to have rolling blackouts. Now imagine if you are in the path of one of those rolling blackouts. People are living in their cars right now because that's the only source of heat they have. Rich, I know you've got so much, but what I'm trying to do is put in perspective how dangerous this is. And maybe if we ever learn the truth about how many people were killed because of lack of preparation and the grid being shut off, and we'll talk about natural gas, we'll talk about fuel supplies, we'll talk about electricity, we'll talk about that today. And Rich is going to bring it all up in the news, but it's real serious business, class. And you can't depend on anybody. Nobody. You can't depend on anybody. Rich?
Well, yeah, and since you brought up this subject, and thanks for deviating off of cars, by the way. And I know
did you say cars?
Swelling when you said it.
Did you say cars?
Articles right here I was going to bring up. Gas is up 18% since Joe Biden got installed as president, and in the next article here is natural gas prices are up 12,000%. People, I got to tell you something. This is by design. This is part of the depopulation agenda. This is part of the elimination of business, especially small business. This is basically an excuse to help the reset. We've talked about the agenda in lots of detail. Forced austerity, crashing the economy, delegitimizing work, eliminating free markets and supply and demand, and calling cash dirty and creating a government centralized cryptocurrency, stopping patriotic, peaceful assembly. We've talked about, controlling technology by the technocrats so you can't move left or right without their permission. Making unemployment the worst ever, social distancing, submissive conformity. Okay, that's a term that I've been coining lately, which breaks people's will. Making virtual reality the new norm and the new reality. Everything is rigged. Voting, all legitimacy, polls. This is all designed to create domestic violence, depression, division, chaos, infighting. We've talked about this is all part of the plan. Eliminate the Constitution, freedom, liberty, the rule of law, food shortages, depopulation, eliminating free speech, forced vaccines and medical tyranny to destroy your immune system. We've talked about all this. This is planned. Think about this. Natural gas up 12,000% since Joe Biden got installed. I want you to wrap your head around that number and think about your assets or your individual, and you got to put the word quotes around investments today, and an asterisk, and italicize it, because it's all a joke. Because now, when you have eliminated the rule of law, because certain groups demanded no protection rights and restitution under that rule of law, and you allow people to get targeted based on their group, what you've done is now you have nobody there to fight for you. You've eliminated checks on runaway power. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job based on what group you're in, and proven results and qualifications and hard work no longer matters, plus then you give you protect the most corrupt companies in the country with liability immunity, and you don't expect wealth and equality. I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face. I know Vince has too. This is what happens when you put your group, your hyphen, and your pronoun before being an American. We have given free lunch to the big corporations and the most corrupt portion of government. Free lunch. That means no accountability. That means they've sold you out to the highest bidder to manufacture their own perception of self-importance and self-preservation. All these articles that we've given over years of hypocrisy and double standards and brainwashing. You think this is like new? No, we didn't predict it. We used math and objective facts and proof to show you what was happening. You didn't have to predict it. You don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be a prophet. You don't have to be a speculator. They're poisoning you with psyops and chemical and biological weapons. What the hell do you think is going to be happening? All right. So what I'm going to do, Vince, is I just want to put an exclamation point on what I do here on my little farm. I have a thermal curtain that separates my cabin in two. I do that for the 3 cold months of the year, which is basically December, January, and February. And as you all know, we really didn't even have a winter showing up until the second week of February, and we're supposed to be in the 30s starting today and 40s for highs for the next 10 days. So we're going to have basically a week and a half of winter. I have maybe in my deepest spot, 1.5 inches of snow. Maybe. So even though we did dip into the negatives for 4 days, this is nothing. It really is nothing. It's a typical Arctic front, and when you see Arctic fronts, how they descend in a U, and we talked about this the other day, Vince, the sides, the east and west, are the last to expand to get it, and the first to have it eliminated. Because when you look at the jet stream, as it comes through, like, for example, I use my area here in northwest Montana. The jet stream and the garden zones are very close together because of that jet stream and some maritime influence from the west coast. So we are kind of like in a little banana belt here compared to a lot of the state because of that U that I just explained. All right, that being said, there's different ways to do it. You can't just think outside the box and talk outside the box. You got to live outside the box. And this is why I harvest my own firewood on my own property. In other words, I manage my own forest. So if there's a tree that might fall on one of my buildings, I'm going to cut it down before it gets too big, that I can't twist it and control the fall with the size and width of the notch. I do everything. Instead of fighting seasons and fighting circumstances, I use it to my advantage. I keep my food downstairs in the basement. I don't even turn on my refrigerator during these cold months. And my food stays a perfect 30 to 35 degrees, maybe close to 40, which is what a refrigerator does. When I cut down trees, I just use a little common sense and logic. If I have to cut down a green tree, which is actually rare, I usually wait for them to die, and I have a hard time even keeping up with the blowdowns and death of trees. But if I have to cut down a dead tree, I'm going to cut it down, and I'm going to buck it with a very sharp chainsaw so I don't have to work hard. I let gravity do the work for me. So I'm cutting into the tree green. I let it sit on the ground, and I'll collect it several months later when it's dry, and I can pick up the bucks easier because dry wood's lighter, correct? So I use circumstances and seasonality as an advantage, and instead of fighting it, I use it for my benefit. And a lot of people who are forced into urban, suburban America who come from the public government schools, they're not taught self-sufficiency. They're not taught skill sets. They're taught groupthink. They're taught how to be followers. They're taught for the purpose of benefiting the elite so the monies and the wealth redistribution can go from the little guy to the big guy so the big guy, which is very few of them compared to us, can control and manage and consolidate power, money, and control. So it's up to us to start thinking outside the box. So, Vince, if it's up to you, if it's okay with you, I know we're heading towards a break. Can I start doing news and articles, if you don't mind?
Yeah. I just have one comment about cutting limbs when they're green. It's easier on the chain of the chainsaw. Way easier. It's almost like it's being lubricated, and it will preserve the life of your chainsaw. Well said, Rich. Class, Jason will not be taking calls today. Tomorrow, Gwyneth will be with us for an hour, and we're going to see how she does. I'm looking forward to broadcasting with Gwyneth. Thursday, it'll be me, and Friday, it will be me. Tips from the book. Rich?
Well, thank you, sir. And Vince, as I always try to remember, thank you for letting me exercise my First Amendment right, which over 1 million combat soldiers gave their life for these freedoms, liberties, and so-called rule of law and justice, which does not exist anymore. Okay, first article. I'm going to basically talk about general news, and then I'm going to morph into COVID information. So I have a lot of stuff, folks, so I'm just going to start ripping it out. And Vince, if you have any comments after I'm done with a section, I'm going to ask you if you even believe some of this stuff because it's so surreal. Okay, first article. Democrat Congresswoman calls for truth commission. You have no idea how hard it is to not drop the phone from laughter right now. Listen to these next few articles after the article I just mentioned. Next, Jeffrey Lord read through the Democrats' 77-page impeachment paper and identified 75 lies. That's a lie per page, folks. Next, Democrats deceptively edited the Trump video and got caught. Next, Eric, speaking about getting caught, Eric Swalwell, you know the guy who's on all these intelligence communities who had an affair with a Chinese spy? You know that guy. Yeah. You know, kind of like Dianne Feinstein, who basically employed a Chinese spy for 20 years. If this happened a few years ago, these people would be hung for treason. Anyway, he got caught photoshopping a tweet at the impeachment trial. And what happens to him? Nothing. He gets a slap on the wrist. Next, someone tell President Trump attorneys the Democrats' footage showing violence at the Capitol on January 6th. People, sit down for the last few words of this article. Was filmed by an Antifa person. You can't even make this stuff up. Next, more evidence. Riots at the Capitol were pre-planned by members of Antifa, neo-Nazi, and others. These are all bought and paid for people. I've seen videos of Black Lives Matter and the KKK all dressed in their garb coming off the same bus. It doesn't matter. It's about division. It's about subjective emotional opinion. Do you understand? You know what they're doing, Vince, and if you have a comment, I just want, what they're doing is they're literally not just manufacturing perception, but they're manufacturing evidence. This is all illegal. Why are these people not in prison? Vince, you have a comment on those last half a dozen articles?
Well, indirectly I do. And the comment is this. You're talking about the Truth Commission. Well, how about this for a start? How about who killed JFK? That'd be nice to know. Another thing, that was 1963. How about this? Have aliens been found on Earth in the United States? How about that? How about what is in Area 51? How about that? I mean, those are just three small questions about the truth. And William Jefferson Blythe Clinton in 1992 wanted to know the answers to those questions, but he actually formulated in two questions. He wanted to know about UFOs and / aliens, and he wanted to know who killed JFK. And what he found out was his clearance wasn't high enough. So as a selected president of the United States, William Jefferson Blythe Clinton could not find out about UFOs, aliens, and who killed JFK. He actually sent his right-hand man, the father of Chelsea, Webster Hubble, to go find out. And it's been alleged that for years that Webb Hubble is Chelsea Clinton's dad. I mean, you look at them and they look the same. They have the same face. Okay, so, yeah, I'd like to know the truth, but our government is not capable of telling the truth.
But the fact that they're
has
manufacturing evidence, they should be arrested for that. We'll be right back after the break, folks.
Well, arrested, that would be a good start. And then tried in a court of the villagers. And then, if found guilty, draw it and quartered. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, back to you.
Well, thank you, sir. Basically, to put an exclamation point on that last group of articles that we just discussed, was basically that the rule of law, evidence, facts, jurisdiction, accountability, you name it, has all been redefined from reality. In other words, and I've talked about this in so many ways with thousands of examples, we are living the consequences of decades of inaction towards political correctness. We have lowered the bars of standards and expectations for a job so low that absolutely nothing matters and everything is now manipulated and corrupted. So this truth commissioner, this Democrat BS artist, is basically, we just should redefine it because it has nothing to do with truth. It has everything to do with creating enough focus groups and polls and seeing how stupid the useful idiots are to see how much they can make them believe and how they can tweak them in different directions for the vote, which doesn't even matter anymore because voting doesn't matter. It's all rigged, and I'm going to discuss that with some articles today, too. So just call it the propaganda, hoax, false flag, and gaslighting commission, not the truth commission. And speaking of, let's talk about this next article. GOP ranking members demand Pelosi explain why she refused to turn over documents on U.S. Capitol security and why she delayed the response to the 1-hour siege. Do you think that they knew this was coming? With all the evidence of Blantifa, not just videoing, not just starting the insurrection, not just leading it, all that evidence that we've discussed, do you think Nancy Pelosi knew what was coming? Every article I read, she does. Next, Biden to allow 25,000 illegal immigrants waiting in Mexico to enter the U.S. And by the way, they're not going to be tested. Not that testing matters, because it's all a bunch of BS to manage the people through fear. But the hypocrisy and double standards, they want to eliminate our businesses. They want to eliminate our freedoms and liberties and rule of law and justice, but they allow unvetted illegal aliens to come in with no vetting of skill sets, of capital resources, of criminal behavior, of diseases that kill people. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Next, Biden terminates national emergency order at the southern border. People, we've talked about the UN documents. They want to bring in, over the next 25 years, 300 to 600 million people. It's a take down of America, of democracy, of the Bill of Rights, of the Constitution, of freedom, of liberty. This is to create, it's not a left-right paradigm. It's very little of that. It's the aristocracy managing and controlling the serfs. I've given thousands of examples of this over the years. Next, billionaires ready to fund Biden's refugee surge. These are articles published in the public domain. I don't make this stuff up. Vince does not make this stuff up. We don't coerce or collude and make up articles before the show. These are all published in the public domain. Next, Capitol Police officers issues vote of no confidence in acting chief and leadership. Let me repeat that, please. Capitol Police officers issue vote of no confidence in acting chief and leadership. This is what happens when you delegitimize work. This is what happens when everything is corrupted from at the top, when everything is manipulated. When you give liability immunity to the biggest corporations and the most fraudulent, illegitimate, fascist part of government. When you enforce fraud, and fraud has no statute of limitations, by the way, but when you have the Supreme Court justices bought and paid for, except for Alito and Thomas. And I know last week I mentioned that they're going to look at evidence. I think this is going to be a dog and pony show theater. They should have done their job when all this evidence, and there's still more coming out every day of election fraud. This is what happens when you give free lunch to the elite. They give us back more divide and conquer strategies. They eliminate more laws through precedents. And this is what we get. Vince, do you have any comment before I move on?
No, please move on.
Okay, but you got to admit that the fact that Capitol Police officers
all right, actually, I do.
No confidence.
I do have some comments. So when I look at these guys, who are the head of, the police forces, whether you call them captains, whatever you want to call these guys. And they have 4 stars, 5 stars. They can't find another square inch to put another medallion on their uniform. They've got stripes on it. They're like in the U.S. Navy, like an admiral. These guys feel that it's necessary to compete with someone who actually has accomplished something. And you listen to the way they speak. You wonder, where the heck did they go to school? And what actual language is that? Is that a derivative of English that they're speaking? And you've got to wonder, how did that guy get so far on so little, make so much, and stay so long? That's the end of my comment.
Yeah, it's called bought and paid for. It's called treason. It's called corruption. It's called sedition. It's called espionage. It's called selling out your country. I hope I wasn't too vague on that response. Okay, next article. Peter Navarro says, and he is a patriot. He's an economist. He's a PhD. He says what Mike Pence did to Donald Trump will go down in history as one of the greatest betrayals imaginable. Let me use the words I just used a couple seconds ago. Not just betrayal, traitor, coward, seditionist. He is a traitor to the American people. Bought and paid for or blackmailed. I can't wait till he uses his Christianity and his faith in a public speech again. What a hypocrite. What a turncoat. What a Benedict Arnold. Next. Outrageous.
Hold it just a second. Rich, what about the Borgias? What about the Pope who would sell indulgences? Okay? Using faith like that is
hypocrisy.
It's blasphemy. It's outrageous. It is beyond outrageous.
Yeah, and I wish
I'm trying to think of
longer, Vince, but you know, I that's one of the reasons I try to move quickly, because I have so much news and information.
Okay.
And I apologize. You know, next article. Outrageous. Facebook flags and bans Gateway Pundit. And it's, by the way, it's the Gateway Pundit. It's one of the best resources out there for truth. The Gateway Pundit. Pundit is spelled Pundit. Anyway, there was a video of late-night ballot dumps at the TCF Center, and Facebook eliminated it, purged it, citing nudity and sexual activity. You can't even make this stuff up. The left that promotes all that type of stuff, where Madonna was able to go and talk about, you vote for a Democrat and I'll give everybody BJ's. Right after she said she thought about blowing up the White House. I mean, you can't. This is beyond Twilight Zone, folks. Next. Bombshell. New York official admits Cuomo hid nursing home data so the feds wouldn't find out. People, I'm reading articles right now where Cuomo is being compared to Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy. And where are all the tens of thousands of people in New York and these swing states that had their parents and grandparents murdered? Where are you? Next. Biden regime. If corporations hire Americans instead of non-citizens, they will be criminally investigated by the DOJ. Let me repeat that. When I say I'm repeating something, I'm not trying to be condescending to your intelligence, okay? But this is so surreal, so 1984, so illegal that you got to hear it sometimes 10 times to believe this is a published article in the public domain. The Biden regime, if corporations hire Americans instead of non-citizens, they will be criminally investigated by the DOJ. The first thing you think of is buyer's remorse, but we all know that Donald Trump won this in a landslide. And what the powers that be are trying to orchestrate a phony impeachment to validate a stolen election and distract and divert from their crimes while basically hovering over the airwaves with fake benevolence and made-up reasons for eliminating our rights, freedoms, liberty, rule of law, and life, while it's still trying to validate an election won by Donald Trump in the biggest landslide in presidential history. John Solomon, he's a mathematician. Many mathematicians and statisticians has proved that these computer algorithms with ballots at these precincts were phony. These ballots were manipulated at local levels. They knew how many of the votes and ballots they needed to go for Biden at the very end. That's why they stopped the voting in the middle of the night. And that's why they use fractional reserve voting. All right. I try really hard not to go off into tangents, but it's impossible sometimes. Next. This is for you, Vince. And trending Missouri County sheriffs will arrest feds who violate the Second Amendment under Biden. For those of you in Missouri, I think you should, when you see a police officer, especially find out who these sheriffs who got together and is going to stick up for you, the voter, the taxpayer, the American nationalist, the citizen, and to keep your Second Amendment alive. These sheriffs and the people and the deputies who work for them should be counted as heroes. Okay? You need to thank them. You need to shake their hand. These are what sheriffs are supposed to do. These are people actually paid by the government, a few of them, who are doing their job. So those of you in Missouri, please find out who those sheriffs are and send them $100 gift certificate. You know, I did that to our local police like 6 months ago. I didn't ask for anything back. I just gave them $100 for a pizza place. You know, do something like that. Make them feel appreciated because they're doing their job. Next, health inspector does a happy dance moments after ordering a Southern California brewery to close. These people in government are getting paid to destroy your business, and they're doing happy dances on video. We'll be right back.
Just stirring my iced coffee. Rich Scheben, back to you.
Well, thank you, Vince. I'm sitting here in a T-shirt, 72 degrees, next to my 8 feet from my wood stove.
Rich, but before you continue, very quickly, how well does your cast iron wood stove in your kitchen area heat the cabin?
Oh, it does. I have to almost let the coals go down to nothing before I put the next piece of wood in. Mm-hmm. Because it's extremely efficient, and wood is the best heat. And I have like 40 acres, 50 acres here, and I have to manage my forest. And when the trees die, or like I said, I need to cut a tree down because it might get too big and it could compromise one of my structures. That's why I mentioned when I use a chainsaw, and I have to cut down a live tree, I will fell it, limit, and bucket so I can have less wear and tear on my chainsaw. And then I come back a few months later and then pick up the bucks when they're drier, so they're lighter to pick up. So I use everything to my advantage. Wood heat is the best, and this is why another one of the reasons we always talk about buying yourself 20 to 40 acres, because this way you can manage your forest, you can raise some animals, you can have a garden. I mean, if you bought a cow, a pregnant cow, and you had, let's say you were a family of 4, let's just say, or a couple, whatever, doesn't matter. That cow and that calf on the hoof, if you knew how to butcher, that's going to be like $1 a pound by the time it's all over, if that, and you're going to have probably 3-4 years of food. So we have to not just talk outside the box, not just think outside the box. We have to live outside the box because we don't have representation. We have a corrupt form of government that only represents the elite. This is one of the reasons I do all this. I don't do it for fame or infamy or money. And Vince can say the same thing. I'm not trying to speak for you, Vince, but we are doing this because we're Americans. We're doing this for the people because the people don't have representation. Okay, if it's okay with you, Vince, I'd like to continue with more news.
Yeah, just one exclamation point. You're talking about the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Missouri passed the bill to nullify federal gun laws. So I don't have the details on it, but it looks like there are other states such as Kansas and South Dakota, Tennessee, Arizona, Wyoming have joined, and they have some kind of legislation on the books to nullify federal gun laws. So the average Joe, I'm talking about, the one at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who wants to come for your guns, it looks like some states have decided that it's really important to nullify whatever the average Joe wants to do. Back to you.
Yeah, that's called informal secession, by the way, people. Okay, next article. And we can talk about that for 5 shows, but because of the lack of time we have an hour left, so I'm cruising through. Next article, smoking gun email reveals Comey told Clapper FBI unable to sufficiently corroborate the Steele dossier. So what does he do? He goes and signs it anyway. See, as long as they can sell the narrative for their agenda, the people who do the things against the law, who lower the bars of standards and expectations for doing their flipping job, nothing happens to them. If this happened to any one of us, we'd be in the who's gal for life. Next, you're not going to believe this one, folks. Pure racism is what it's titled. A New York City principal sends home white identities, there's like 8 of them, to parents to convert them to white traitors. So they want people to be tattletales, snitchers, gossipers, rumors, hearsayers. Guess what that was, folks? Russia, Russia, Russia. Steele dossier. Mueller, Mueller, Mueller. Hundreds of millions of your taxpayer dollars going to false flags and hoaxes and propaganda. And nothing happens to these people. Next. Bombshell. Media, big business, and political establishment caught colluding to rig the 2020 election. But you're not supposed to say anything. But you remember when Donald Trump won in 2016? Do you remember the tweet from Nancy Pelosi? Our election was hijacked, she said. There is no question, she said. Congress has the duty to protect our democracy and follow the facts. Okay, let's follow the facts. Let's look at all this evidence. Everybody, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, all you people come to Montana, bring Right Side Broadcasting, and let's have a trial. Let's look at the actual evidence, because the Supreme Court is going to do theater. They should have done their job, and they've been bribed and blackmailed to not do their job. We'll be right back.
Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Evans with us. Rich?
Well, thank you, Vince. What I'm going to do is I touched on the Supreme Court. I touched on Peter Navarro earlier. So I just want to recall, he did 3 reports. I want the Supreme Court to look at all this stuff. I mean, he did his due diligence. He came out with real numbers, talked about all the illegal votes by category, by state. Some of the categories are like absentee ballots cast without statutory required application, absentee ballots cast that arrived after Election Day, ballots that were requested before and after statutory deadline, absentee ballots cast from addresses other than the voters where they legally reside, ballots that were returned on or before the postmark. This is a joke. The Supreme Court, you call yourself justices, you're a frickin' joke. Ballots that returned before the postmark date? Are you kidding me? And all these categories are in the tens and hundreds of thousands. Every one. You have made Mike Pence and the Supreme Court justices change that. Take your robes off. Put on a clip-on tie. You're worthless. Absentee ballots without a postmark? Are you kidding me? Or ballots requested under the name of a registered voter without consent? Dead voters, double voters, felon voters, ghost voters, illegal ballot harvesting, voting machine irregularities, mail-in ballots cast by workers other than after the registration deadline. Oh my God! You're telling me that you didn't look at this evidence? Are you bought and paid for? Are you real? Are you human? Are you American? Non-citizens voting? No corresponding voter registration to the numbers? Are you kidding me? Out-of-state voters who voted in-state, poll watchers and poll observer abuses, signature matching errors, voting machine irregularities, never mind math impossibilities, voters over 100 years old, voters who voted in the wrong county. It turned out to be hundreds of thousands of votes, where Joe Biden won by tens of thousands of votes. This is a joke. You guys in the Supreme Court are jokes. You should take off your robes, go home. You're not even doing your job, and you're getting paid a big paycheck. I mean, Amy Barrett, you brag about your Christian Catholic faith. Again, same with you, Kavanaugh. You know, they put you on the stand to eliminate due process. Every one of those women said that they lied but one, and here you didn't even go after them? What kind of a coward are you? Don't you care about your country? Next. Democrats were only able to win 2020 by breaking chain of custody laws in every swing state. This is a joke. This is against the law. The ballots should come in sealed. They need to be checked from person to person. They need to be validated. They need to be signed. None of this happened. You can't have just ballots showing up with all these videos of ballots showing up with planes and vans and cars in the middle of the night and call this legit. You are actually making America illegitimate. Do you understand? You are spitting on the graves of over 100 million, of over 1 million combat soldiers who died for us. So what, you in the Supreme Court get these hundreds of thousands of dollars of salary for not doing your job? How about the military? Where's your code, your honor, your oath, your duty? When you see all this foreign intervention and evidence, where is it? Next, huge development. Hand recount finds Dominion voting machine shorted every Republican candidate in Windham, New Hampshire. Everyone. Everyone. Did I say that clearly enough? Every freaking one. Next, they got caught. Dominion-owned machines removed 6% of the votes. 85 towns. And we're still playing the Banana Republic card. So Mike Pence, the Supreme Court justices, put quotes around that term, except for Justice Thomas, you're literally selling out your country when you have evidence up the yin-yang that we've been given it for over 3 months, and you say there's no evidence? Next, New Hampshire Department of Justice, again, put justice in quotes, refuses to investigate the largest voting machine counting error in state history. See, nothing means anything, people. If you're bought and paid for, or you are willing to be blackmailed and sell out your country, everything's fine. Next, 300,000 Biden vote dumps late on election night in Virginia cannot be adequately explained or tied to final results. We've talked about Virginia. We've talked about New Mexico. We've talked about California. We've talked about all these other states that weren't even in the swing state category where voter fraud occurred. And you people at the top do nothing. You're stabbing every American in the back while using the term Constitution, legitimacy, democracy. You're fake. You're phony. You've sold us out to the elite. Next. More on Biden's 308,000 ballot drop in Fairfax County, Virginia on election night. This one ballot drop was 73% of the Biden vote. One ballot drop in the middle of the night was 73% of the Biden vote. Can you connect the dots here, people? Next. Colorado's 2020 election results are also suspect. Biden's number raised serious red flags and alleged turnout. They're comparing it to Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Next. Why are Arizona Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors not in jail? They are reportedly currently breaking the law by not handing over the 2020 election ballots. It's supposed to be 22 months to look at all this evidence. They're not allowing us ballots. They're not allowing us forensic evidence on the ballots. Pulitzer proved 65 countries were involved in the election fraud steal. But yet our Supreme Court is bought and paid for and blackmailed? Especially Kavanaugh and Amy Barrett. All three last picks by President Trump. He gave you a career and you stabbed him and the American people in the back? You're disgusting. Next. Previous study in AccuVote voting machines like those used in New Hampshire found serious flaws in accountability to steal votes with little risk detection. All right, I'm going to move on to healthcare, folks. And the first article, you're going to think, I'm making this up. You're going to think, and this is why I often try and give my disclaimer, published articles in the public domain. Are you ready, folks? Are you sitting down? Maybe you should have a swig of a shot of something, because you're not going to believe it. You're going to think I'm lying. But the NHS instructs midwives to say chest feeding, and this is not just midwives. It's hospitals and other healthcare institutions and diagnosticians. They're instructed to say chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, human milk instead of mother's milk. Look it up. I know you think I'm making this up. I promise you, I am not. Next, CDC exposed inflated COVID deaths by 1,600% throughout the election, violated multiple federal laws. Hey, justice. Or should I say jokes? Supreme Court jokes. Hey, Supreme Court jokes. If they violated federal laws, where the hell are you? Unbelievable. Next. Toronto man is forced to quarantine, comes forward about Canada's coronavirus internment camps. People. Next, there's an article here. Well, I just want to remind everybody of an article from the New England Journal of Medicine. It hasn't been tainted like the Lancet since they got caught, to my knowledge. But they said, and I'm going to just read a couple of excerpts. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. And I totally agree. And we've given tons of evidence from the Denmark study saying the same thing. We've given evidence where dentists are coming forth saying that masks are making gum disease increase by 50%, and that bacteria is the worst bacteria in the human body, which is associated with heart attacks and strokes. We've given all this information. We've talked about bacterial pneumonia because of the mask. We talked about staph infections because of the mask. We talked about all this. I have an article right here. Doctor admits masks don't work. All viruses can get through. See, these are facts. These are published articles in the public domain by people who aren't willing to be bought and paid for and who puts the American people first. And speaking of putting the American people first, I'm proud to admit that this is an article titled "Newly Elected Governor Lifts Predecessor's Mask Mandate." And that's Greg Gianforte, the new governor of Montana. Thank you for using common sense and logic. Thank you for doing the reading and research. And he just lifted the state masks mandate here in Montana. And I think he's doing some really good things on some gun laws coming up, too, that we discussed about Missouri and other states as well, like Utah, regarding open carry and things like that. I think some of that's pending. But from what I'm noticing, I think he's doing a really good job. So Greg Gianforte, thank you, Governor. Thank you for having guts and putting the people of Montana first. Next, there's a video out, and it's going to be infecting with COVID, swab, RNA vaccine, artificial intelligence, stuff like that. And basically, it's if you look at it, it's on BitChute, and the title of it on the screen will be, "If you put your hand in the fire, you'll get burnt." That is the name of it. And I wish I could get into a lot of details, but there's not a lot of time. But I will mention a few things. One of the things that they talk about in the beginning is the swab test. And people, you have to, now have I personally verified this, but experts have. There's experts in this video. They're leaving nanotechnology in your oral pharynx from the swab test. They're calling it a medical device. They're also calling it a synthetic pathogen. This COVID virus has not been isolated or sequenced, which means it's never been proved that the virus is the cause of any disease. There's no evidence of isolation.
Rich Scheben's with us. Rich had a couple quick comments. One, you were talking about postmarking ballots. If you send in a rebate form, it will say must be postmarked by, and there'll be a specific date. So if you want your, $1 rebate or $10 rebate, whatever it might be, the company issuing the rebate is going to check the postmark. That's for a rebate, right? And the next question is, what would the king do? What would the king do? So Rich has been asking a hypothetical question. Why don't these guys in Washington, D.C. do their job? Why are they not honorable? Why do they not have integrity? Because the reason is that they don't want to be dethroned. They don't want to lose the perks and the benefits and all the trappings that come with the illegalities that they're involved in. And each one of these guys and gals has a gun pointed to the other guys and gals' head, and they are threatening to expose them for their corruption. So it's in gridlock. Nobody's going to do anything. Nobody's going to move. It's going to be status quo until the revolution. And you mentioned BitChute, B-I-T-C-H-U-T-E. One word, B-I-T-C-H-U-T-E. Ron Gibson, thank you very much for putting us on BitChute as well as YouTube. So class, USA Prepares is on BitChute on the Ron Gibson channel. Ron, R-O-N, as in Ronald, Gibson, G-I-B-S-O-N. So if you want to find us and you're sick of supporting YouTube, then you can go to BitChute. You can just go to your favorite search engine. Hopefully it's DuckDuckGo, DuckGo.com. And you can make that your favorite search engine if you'd like. That's one that a lot of USA Prepares instructors use. And you can type in BitChute, B-I-T-C-H-U-T-E space, USA space, P-R-E-P-A-R-E-S. BitChute, USA Prepares. And you'll find us. Thank you very much, Ron Gibson. I really appreciate all your hard work and everything that you do to put us out on the internet every broadcast day. Thank you, Ron. I really appreciate it. Back to you, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. And yes, thank you to Ron Gibson. Thank you to the thousands of American patriots out there. It's not a left-right paradigm. It's about the rule of law. It's about freedom. It's about liberty. It's about respecting the over 1 million combat soldiers who gave their life at young ages for our freedoms. When they say things like, oh, it's about equality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity, and then I show for years thousands of pieces of evidence that shows that those words are politically correct buzzwords. used to keep you submissive. We've shown so much evidence that the rich get richer and the monies and the prosperity and the opportunity goes from the bottom 93% to the top 1 to 2%. Week after week, using every piece of evidence about welfare for the rich, welfare for the banks, printing money out of thin air, fractional reserve lending, stock buybacks, Keynesian economics, group identity politics, professional wordsmithing, all the destroying America through mediocrity. Thousands of pieces of evidence. And there's still enough. This is why they call people useful idiots, because they're still out there sticking up for their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun, screaming equality, fairness, tolerance, when the middle class is being dissected. And you're going to have what's left, the super wealthy and the super poor slaves. That is, if you don't get killed through wars, eugenics, genocide, biological and chemical warfare. Okay. I'm going to continue to use published articles in the public domain. Next article. Prevent people from being intimidated or pressured into taking experimental vaccines. This is from the American Frontline Doctors. Okay, they're creating a petition to try to give rights to the people so the people are no longer intimidated and coerced into taking things that they don't want to their body. Where are the feminists? Whatever happened to it's my body, I can do what I want. Where are the big mouths now? We'll be right back after this break, folks. I got quite a few more articles to go.
Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, you're going to be talking about the refineries that have been shut down because of the weather. Is that something you had on your list?
I don't know if I'm going to get to that, so if you want to discuss it now, Vince, go ahead, and I could always
all right.
Not mention it.
All right, very quickly, class. Fractional distillation is a method of taking crude oil, which is like a tarry, gooey, black substance, and it's heated, it's boiled up, and through a column, the different products that you know as engine oil, tar, naphtha, kerosene, gasoline, diesel fuel, all of those products come off at a different temperature. So think of it like a high-rise building with an elevator. And at the bottom of the elevator, in the basement, they're cooking this crude oil. And then at the first floor, you get the heavy oils. Then at the second floor going up, you get a little bit lighter than that. And, midway up the high rise, you might get something like kerosene, and then a little higher than that, gasoline and so forth. Well, it's so cold across the United States that system doesn't work because the outside air is blowing across the distillation column and it's cooling it, and it's messing with the temperatures at which these products boil off. That's how cold it is. It's also so cold that the electric power grid can't supply electricity to the refineries because they draw a tremendous amount of current. So that's another reason why the refineries are offline. And another reason is if they use natural gas, the natural gas is freezing in the pipelines going to the refineries. It's also freezing in the same pipelines that go to people's houses. So we have a real mess here because electricity, some of it is generated by natural gas. Natural gas is used to heat houses. Natural gas is used in the refining process. And so it's like our energy system is at a severe risk of collapse because of these cold temperatures.
Okay, Vince, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, we lost you for a few seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Boy,
yeah.
I don't know what to say, but all right. So I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, You should have on hand everything that you need to survive. And we've been telling you to get out of Dodge, because if you live in an apartment and you are at the end of the power cord from the grid, you have no control over what happens. If you are at the end of a faucet, that is at the end of the municipal water supply, you are at risk. You need to get away from all of that so that you can be in control of your own life and your own destiny. That's the answer in a nutshell. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's going to be way harder than just turning on the faucet or flipping on the light switch or turning up or down the thermostat. You can do all that in the good days. But when things go bad and the utility company says, you know what, we don't have enough electricity for y'all, so we're going to have rolling blackouts. And we'll let you know when it's going to get better. That's how it is. Now, for Rich and me and Gwyneth and Kyle and Sharon and others, we're in control of our own destiny. Now, if we make mistakes, it's bad. But we did them. We are not at the mercy of people we don't know. That's the whole point. Rich?
Well, thank you, Vince. People, before I go on to the next article, just remember, look at all the things that they say is no evidence. Look, the lack of transparency. They use their defense. Their main defense is liar, liar, pants on fire. They censoring everything, redefining facts and evidence. I mean, people, how can you trust a word that they say? They're done. Everything is done by Hollywood, by the mainstream media. They're all actors. They have a script. They have a plan. They have a template for destruction, and you're part of the destruction. So let me go back to talking about health care. Fauci wins $1 million prize for defending science. Think about that, defending science. He's got patents and profits on these so-called diseases. He's defending science. He used for how long this fake PCR test that they turned up the unit of measure and everything was COVID, fruits, goats, Coca-Cola. Remember all that? I've said it. How about the acronym PIC? Pneumonia, influenza, and COVID. Everything's going into the COVID. Do you remember all the miracle articles I shared with you where only 23 Americans in a given week got tested positive for COVID, or 15,000 cases were reported last year at the same time for the flu? But it all goes into COVID. So there's no flu. Flu's wiped out. 130 years of seasonal flu wiped out. Plummets 95%. I know this audience is not that dumb to believe that. Next. Scientist who created first COVID saliva test dies mysteriously. Well, imagine my shock. Maybe he created a test that was accurate and didn't show enough COVID positive, and they didn't want him to tell the truth. You think? Next. GOP subpoena for coronavirus nursing home death data gets blocked by the New York Democrats. It gets blocked. Subpoenas are getting blocked. Do you see how corrupt we are? You can't believe anything anymore. Nothing. Zero. It's all propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies, especially gaslighting. Next, doctors now warn about permanent damage in cardiovascular events following the COVID-19 vaccination. People, these videos that I talked about, you need to look at. Okay, it's absolutely essential that you look at these videos that I mentioned earlier today. Same thing with election fraud, unmasked, absolute proof by Mike Lindell. You need to listen to these mathematicians like John Solomon, economists like Peter Navarro, expert like Joe Van Pulitzer, he has the legal valid means of checking machines and ballots forensically. And they're not even they're going against the law for everything, from the state legislature to everywhere. Not even adhering to subpoenas. We're lawless. We're lawless. Our Supreme Court jokes. Vince, what did they call, back in the medieval days, they had a court gesture or something like that, who's kind of like a comedian. It would roll around,
court jester,
do somersaults. What
court jester.
Court jester, okay.
Jester.
I think that's what we should call them. The Supreme Court Jesters. Take Alito and Thomas out of there. But what do you think? I think that's a really good idea. Okay, next. I'm running out of time here. Where was I? Oh, it's not just the elderly. 19-year-old in hospital ICU after second dose of Pfizer coronavirus vaccine. I want you to also think about the fact, folks, that hospitals, diagnosticians, that includes physicians, that includes healthcare institutions, got paid for saying that person was a diagnosed positive coronavirus. Remember how we talk about bribery and blackmail? That's under a category of bribery. This is what happens when you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job. You delegitimize work. You delegitimize your country. We're not even rewarding mediocrity anymore. We're past that. We're rewarding criminals. We're enabling the most corrupt companies with liability immunity. And we're getting, in return, wealth inequality, making people dumber, making them devolve by making them stick up for their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun. Give these people these elite free lunch, eliminate the rule of law for precedence, and we're being used as pawns with no representation. Can you connect these dots here, people? Next, New York man dies 25 minutes after receiving COVID vaccines. Sometimes it's when I put the cursor where I need to be, it stays up for a couple seconds and then it disappears. In case you're wondering why I pause sometimes. Okay, next. 4 elderly patients died on the same day as receiving the Pfizer vaccine. But see, Congress gives liability immunity to these companies. Whew. Hard to believe it's America, people. Next. Man tests positive for COVID 3 weeks after second vaccine dose. So he takes 2 doses, putting his life on the line, and he still gets tested positive for using these phony tests in order to maintain fear in the population to control the people. Evidence, facts, jurisdiction, transparency, rule of law, accountability, all gone. Means nothing. We should just, you know what, Vince? I think we should just start our own language. Picket. Right? Somewhere my was all. Means the same thing.
That's what they've been using that in the public school system. And not only that, they use it.
Absolutely.
And people are using that kind of language.
Start talking pig Latin. You know.
No, that's understandable. That's understandable. I'm talking about there's several dialects that are being used with texting, and pretty soon there won't be any words left. And by the way, class, people are judged by the words they use. People are judged by the words they use. So when someone says THX for thank you in an email, I have to discount that because I think that doesn't mean they really want to say thank you because they're too lazy to type out the 2 words thank you. Yeah. I'm serious. And like Merry Xmas. Who is Merry Xmas? Merry Xmas. That's supposed to mean Merry Christmas. But we're too lazy to even say Christmas.
Well, keep in mind, remember that, I can't remember when it was, last week before, last month, I mentioned a couple of articles where the powers that be were calling acronyms racist. Swear to God, not making this stuff up. We have literally the people who are the lieutenants of the powers that be. Some people use deep state, some people use the establishment, some people use the fact that they're bought and paid for Democrats, and we all know it's not a left-right paradigm. We know that. They have literally picked the people to manufacture their perception of self-importance, self-preservation, in order to take the money to sell us out to the highest bidder. Now, let me give one last article on this context before we go into break.
5 seconds.
Immunologist warns Pfizer and Moderna vaccines could cause long-term chronic illness. Chew on that.
Yeah.
Remember what Dr. Shealy said about chronic illness and pharmaceutical drugs. We'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm just here picking the ice out of the coffee. It's freezing in Missouri. Absolutely freezing, but it's going to warm up. Pretty soon we're going to be maybe 4 degrees outside, moving up from minus 11. That's a good sign. And class, I just want you to know that, all of these technologies that are the answer to our energy needs, like solar panels, well, they're all covered with snow, and they're generating 0.0 watts of electricity right now. Rich?
Yeah, what I do is when I get a little dusting, I'll go out with a tool, kind of like a duster on a pole, and I will dust the snow off. It works great. And that's what we do. Obviously, I live off grid. Obviously, I have solar, and it's not that I'm not a proponent of being green. I'm all for it, but it's for individual households. And if the powers that be really wanted us to go green, they would eliminate all property tax if you lived off grid. But they don't want to do that. It's a consolidation and an addiction of power, money, control. They're all hypocrites. They're all liars. They're double standards. They fly around in private jets. Their carbon footprint is 30,000 what the average person is. They're all phony. It's just that they have the microphone. What's it? Vince, okay, all right. Globate, crack a butt leak, what?
Oh, yeah, of course.
This is what,
of course.
For
sure.
We might as well talk like this because nothing means anything. Rule of law, accountability, it all depends on what group you're in. It's a big joke. We might as well just come out here and hyphenate a bunch of syllables. Let's invent a new language.
Rich,
this is
seriously.
where America's at. They have spit on the families of everybody, every combat soldier who gave their life for this country. These Democrat swing states spit on the families of the old people who they had them murdered. They spit on everybody who tried to follow the rule of law their whole life. They have spit in the face of everybody who tried to work hard, have proven results, get a job through qualifications. Means nothing. A few elite and the people who are willing their lieutenants to sell us out for their own personal gain. That's what we have in America right now. All these people who want to put themselves first over their country. And we're giving them free lunch, eliminating the rule of law for their precedents, while we're being targeted for extinction. And they lower the bars of standards expectations so far for a job that work is now delegitimized and people can't control their own destiny. This is a joke. The Supreme Court gestures. That's what it should be. And what the hell happened to our oath, our duty? When the military sees foreign interference, where the average Joe, like myself, is coming up with all these published articles in the public domain, and yet the powers that be, including our Supreme Court gestures, taking away Thomas and Alito, of course, don't see evidence? Because you don't want to look at evidence. And now you're setting up theater to look at evidence coming up soon. And it's obvious it's all fake and phony. Vince, let me ask you a question in the last remaining seconds. How the heck can the people have consumer confidence and trust in this system?
I mentioned Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia. He was Pope from 1455 to 1458 of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. And so he was involved, he and his family were involved with rape and murder and mayhem and all kinds of crimes. But, if you paid him enough, he would sell you indulgences to, cleanse your crimes so that you would get through the pearly gates. That was Pope Alexander VI. Now, you mentioned, I keep mentioning, what would the king do? What would the king do? These guys, and I'm talking about all these kings. I'm talking about the Congress people, the Senate people, the captains of their counties, the mayors, all these little kings. They do not want to relinquish one iota of the benefits and trappings of their little kingdom. They won't do it. So they will do whatever is necessary, lie, cheat, murder, whatever it is that's necessary to keep them on the throne so that they can enjoy the trappings of your hard work. That's what they do. Bribery, sedition, treason, murder. I'm not saying all of them are murderers. I'm just saying that it's almost limitless what these people will do in order to keep their position. Rich, do you disagree or agree?
Oh, of course. Who would not agree with that statement?
Yeah. Rich, thank you so much for all your research and spending so much time. And I would guess that within the next couple hours, your blood pressure will return to normal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We'll see.